Hey, this is Alex Piak, and welcome to the Dominant Agent Podcast, the place where real estate agents and brokers come to learn directly from the top agents, coaches, trainers, and industry influencers on how to build profitable, scalable, and enjoyable businesses by becoming the dominant agent in their market so they can live life on their terms. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Dominant Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Piak. And as you know, we are committed to helping real estate agents build profitable, scalable, and enjoyable real estate businesses so that you can live life on your terms by bringing you access to the absolute best agents, coaches, trainers, and influencers in the industry. And today, our guest is an amazing person. He checks all of those boxes. Today, we're going to be talking to Andrew Gaydosh. Andrew's been recognized as an industry leader by many of the country's top real estate brands, publications, and trade organizations. Andrew Gaydosh and Associates have been recently ranked by the Wall Street Journal as one of the top 200 real estate teams in the country and has earned top honors from RE/MAX, GMAC Real Estate, Better Homes and Gardens, eXp Realty, and the National Association of Expert Advisors. Andrew was actually featured in a full episode of the house hunting program on HGTV. And the thing that Andrew's most proud of is the fact that 74% of his business over the last 5 years comes from his past clients, repeat, and referrals. Andrew, welcome to the Dominant Agent Podcast, my friend.
Hey, Alex, how you doing? Great to be here.
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm super excited to have you on. I've had the privilege now of knowing you since 2014.
Yes, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. So I'm excited to share some of the strategies that you've used in your businesses. I know you've been amazingly successful. And when we talk about the dominant agent, that is you in a nutshell. We're going to talk about the strategy that you have taken over. What is it? Lake Lockingren? Is that what it is?
Yeah, you hit it. Yep. Lake Lockingren is one of our areas.
Yeah. So I want to share with people because, man, you're a rock star when it comes to that area. And I've had the privilege of watching your marketing and how you've really infiltrated that market and become the go-to agent. And I definitely want to share some of that. So I'm super excited to dive into your business. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what actually got you into real estate? How'd you get into this crazy business?
Yeah, so it was kind of unique. I played. In high school I had a landscaping lawn business just in the neighborhood, and was always very driven and very competitive. Had a pretty good high school basketball career, and didn't know really where that was going to take us. But at the end of the day, I had a pretty profitable business that was cutting. Had all the neighbor kids working for me, and it was a great gig. And then I ended up with a full scholarship to play basketball at the University of Dayton. So when I went to school, I had extra cash, right? All the money that I'd saved for school was discretionary, and I really wanted to make a good decision. My dad had a few rental properties when I was a kid, and I really kind of always liked that idea of that passive income. So for me, I really sought out to figure that out while I was in school, while I was in college, and I ended up buying a few rental properties with the money that I had saved up for college, and ended up really focusing my career on marketing and finance there, and got a degree. And so with that, after I bought the first one, I was like, man, I should really get my real estate license, like all investors.
Yeah, let me cut out that middleman. Yeah, they're making money.
So my mother, who was living about 45 minutes from school, she lived in Indiana. She was wanting to get her license as well. And she was a very successful Mary Kay consultant, and they moved around a little bit, and she kind of sold that business. And long story short, she was going to get her license, and she said, hey, I'll pay for your way if you go help me pass the test. And then I went with her to Indianapolis. We got her Indiana license, helped her out. She had been out of school forever. And I think the pivoting moment there, to answer your question, is that while in class, I had lots of conversations with people that were getting their license, and many of them were second and third careers. Several of them were, business executives that had just got downsized. The company was bought out. They did not want to get into a situation where they didn't have control of their destiny. And I didn't hear it once. I heard it several times. Hey, if I was your age and I had the opportunity to do this, I would have started real estate full time from the beginning. And that kind of clicked. So I went back to school, got my Ohio license, focused on just, really obsessing about real estate, finished up my basketball career, was going to go overseas and play. And I decided I could probably make a little bit more money getting into the business right away. So that's kind of how it all took off.
Awesome, man. Yeah, that's awesome. So you've been doing this straight out of college. So I didn't realize that. I didn't know that about you. That's actually something that we have in common. Were you actually selling while still in school, or did you finish up when you finished
I
school?
was. Yeah. So I actually sold in the summer. I tore a ligament in my ankle. Coach sent me home. We couldn't be on campus because I couldn't walk. And I started right away selling real estate in Indiana at that time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember that same thing, man. I remember sitting in class, knowing that I had a closing, and I'm like, man, I'm making like 9 grand today.
Right.
Why
Right.
am I sitting in this classroom
Yeah.
right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So what did those first couple of years look like? I mean, was it super successful right out of the gate? What did that look like?
Yeah. Well, I kind of, looking back on it, it was successful. I sold about 30 houses that first year. It was grinding, back in the day, this was 94, 95. You didn't have internet leads. You literally, every Monday morning, I'd take the newspaper and I would go through and call all the for sale owners, all the expireds, or, I'd look they even have an MLS where I was at. And I had to look through, and it's all the antiquated systems, but it was just a grind. I mean, I just flat out hustled. I time blocked my day. I knew exactly what I needed to do from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and then from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And that in and of itself, along with my CRM at the time, it was Agent 2000, was just how I ran my business. And I knew nobody that would trust me. And really, hell, I wasn't even out of college yet. None of my friends were buying houses. All my friends' parents thought I was just the kid down the street. So everything was working with investors, working with people that needed assistance on the grind. So I was willing to do what others weren't willing to do because I didn't have that spirit yet.
That's a good. Yeah, Matt Curcio, same thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Got licensed young, and same thing. He went the investor route
That's
because
exactly
of the same thing. His buddies weren't buying houses yet.
right.
You said a couple of things I want to dive deep in because I don't think they're inherently normal for most people getting in this business. One is you time blocked and you knew the things that you had to get done. How did you know what the hell to actually be doing as a new agent?
Yeah. So again, then there weren't as many options. I knew that relationships were the key. I knew that I wanted to get the low-lying fruit. So would start out again, back in the day when you'd sell your house, you'd put it in a newspaper, right? If you were a for sale owner, you couldn't put it online. There was no venue for that to do it really. And so the low-lying fruit was I tried to find out who was, already advertising for sale and then try to get them for me to list it. And then of course the expired listings. So I knew that was the primary thing I needed to do. I needed to do that in the morning. And then I needed to call back all the people that in my sphere of influence. So I set out classic 101, who all would I invite to my wedding list? I made a list of 200 people, and that was who I would call. And the conversation was real simple. Hey, it's Andrew Gaydosh. I'm with Lingo Real Estate. How you doing? I don't know if if they didn't know me, if they already knew me in that situation, was, hey, it's Andrew. You probably didn't know this, but I'm back in town. I'm selling real estate now. I just wanted to kind of touch base with you. I know you're probably not ready to do anything, but I'm just, wanted to ask and see if you wanted me to keep you up to date with any solds or any kind of movement or activity in your neighborhood, because, it's important to know what your equity position is. And 9 out of 10 would say, oh yeah, of course, let me know. So that was the end. You wanted to give before you got, because if I made a call, I knew they're not going to give me something without me giving them something, unless they just kind of stumbled across it. So based on that, then I would set up follow-up appointments after I delivered. So the next time I called that person, they showed up in my CRM a month later. Okay, John Smith, it's time to call John Smith. I'd pull up the MLS, see what was, actually back in the day, I'd have to go through the books, what is sold in his neighborhood, give him a call. Hey, John, how you doing? What's up? Hey, there was that house down the street that sold for, $90 a square foot. Man, things are looking up in the neighborhood. Hope you're doing well. You need anything? Oh, by the way, who's the next person that's going to sell in the neighborhood? And I just did that over and over and over again, and just kept building that sphere of influence, did open houses every weekend, and I just created a larger sphere. And then I was neurotic about making sure that my CRM was very, very detailed on the conversations I had with the people, so that I could recall that. And the next time I called them, and it told me when to call them.
That's awesome, man. That's, yeah, really good stuff there. Selling real estate out of the book. Yeah, that's, my dad sold real estate out of the book. So I remember those books, and I was, now we look at it like, how the hell could you sell real estate out of a book? We're just so used to the internet, but there were some pros to that, right? People had to come to you. You were the real estate expert.
Yeah, that's
They
the
needed
key
the book.
there. We were the gatekeeper of the information, so they needed us, and that was the deposit that we could make in their lives in terms of education.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then Fizzbuzz, that was really smart, hitting the newspapers, calling those people.
Right.
So were you pretty successful with Fizzbuzz early on?
I was. I mean, the whole thing there was, hey, listen, I used the scripts, the Howard Brunton scripts, back, if you remember Howard
Star
and
power.
David Knox and all that stuff. So I basically just used them, and it was all about the numbers game. You had to catch them at the right time, and that's the thing that most people don't understand, is that they look at these superstars out there and man, those guys must be really good. I see Jay Kender, I see Alex, I see all these people out there killing it. They really know what they're doing. Well, they do know what they're doing, but you have to understand that they're just working harder. They're grinding harder. They don't have that secret sauce. It's just a matter of being at the right place at the right time sometime. I mean, you hone your skills to put yourself in that position, but a lot of it's just hustle.
Yeah, I always tell a lot of the folks that I work with one-on-one, it's consistency times frequency will get you the desired result, right?
Exactly.
You can't just do it one day, not do it again. You got to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're frequently doing the follow-up, staying in touch, building your brand, being positioned as the go-to agent in the market, like things start to snowball, right? You start to get the momentum. And then the hardest thing is keeping the momentum, because you fall into the roller coaster. You got the momentum, you got the clients. Now you become a servicer.
Exactly.
And you stop doing all the things that got you the clients.
That's why that CRM and that time blocking is so critical, because you have to, and my wife still gets upset with me today because she'll text me and I won't respond, not because I see it. I just didn't see it. It's on my desk. I'm focused on what's up here. If it's an emergency, she knows she can call the office or call whoever I am to kind of get a hold of me. But the point there is that if you let, you get knocked off course, you're not going to deliver what you need to get delivered. The other thing is there's a ton of things that you can do that don't cost a lot of money. And as a young agent, I had no money. I'd spent my money on the houses. I was living at my mom and dad's house, and it was interesting. And they charged me rent because that's my dad. So it was an interesting concept to get out and say, okay, what can I do that doesn't cost a lot of money? I just walked the neighborhoods. I would put together a flyer. Hey, listen, I've got buyers looking in your neighborhood. I would always make sure I had buyers, or somebody in our office did. And I would literally knock on doors. And to this day, I tell you, Alex, yesterday, and I swear to God, a guy named Rod Shockey called me Monday. I met with him yesterday. He was 24 years ago, I sold him a house. And it was one of the first houses in a neighborhood I sold in Richmond, Indiana, that I walked. And to this day, they're still calling you. And it's 25 years later. Well, he gets, annual updates. I haven't talked to him in a while because he was part of our original system. I should have migrated a little bit better. But the point there is that it doesn't cost a lot of money to create a relationship, try to help people out, and they'll remember you forever if you treat them right.
Yeah. The word relationship is resonating with me right now because I just interviewed Ricky Caruth, real estate agent out of Alabama, Florida coast. And he got out of real estate and came back. In the year that he took off, he read 100 books. And when he came back, his only distinction was, I'm going to focus on building the relationships, getting emails, and building my database. Yep. And what I'm hearing is you just did that from the jump, from the beginning.
Yeah. And it's been a godsend in terms of consistency. And, I struggle with this because I really preached, I've got a team, there's 14 of us. And, I still am very active on the listing side of things. And there's certain areas that I specialize in that I'm going to spend my time, which we can go into that in a second. But man, I preach it and I see it. And there's definitely a high correlation for those people that are obsessive about building their database and creating that relationship with people. Those are the ones that are successful. And those are the ones that typically last long in the real estate business.
Do you think that has anything to do with the fact that it's an attraction model versus a chase model? And what I mean by that is when you focus on the relationships, even if you're just sending out a weekly or monthly mail or newsletter and you're not calling them constantly, when they're ready and they reach out to you, right? That's just an easier, there's no competition. You're
Right.
usually not having to sell yourself. They inherently know, like, and trust you.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's awesome that clicked so early on, because I think a lot of agents in the beginning, right, they're on that transaction treadmill.
Right.
They're looking at people transactionally versus
Exactly.
relationship wise. And if you plan on being in this business for 10, 15, 20 years, having referrals and repeats just coming into you because you were smart enough to manage your database, that's a game changer versus every day having to grind on the phone because you have
Right.
no control of where your business comes from.
Exactly. I mean, really at the point after you're in the business 2 or 3 years, your calls should be to your existing database. Everything should be a warm call. Now you're still prospecting through that warm call, but like you just said a minute ago, I would much prefer to go into an appointment where people know me. They've basically ingested a lot of our content already. They know exactly what we're all about. And if the house isn't sold in the first 2 months, they're not blaming me. They're probably listening to me as the authority to tell them that maybe it's priced high a little bit, or maybe we need to change out the carpet. It just gives you a whole different level of, I guess, for them to be confident in your skill set.
Yeah, fantastic. So outside of the database, what are your top three lead generation that you're using right now, whether it be you and or just your team, that you're providing them that is really working in today's market?
Yeah, so I think that we use Commissions Inc. for uh, you know typical pay-per-click type of lead generation, and so that all funnels into to that system along with Zillow. Others that we use, our Facebook leads, they all kind of go into our sync system until we have a meaningful conversation. Once that meaningful conversation happens, we flip them over to our CRM, which currently is RealVolve. We're getting ready to switch that over, probably a follow-up boss. And so that's probably the typical internet lead type lead generation pillar. So I look at it in terms of three different pillars. You have the internet pillar, leads coming in, cold leads, some of them are sign calls, that type of thing. And then essentially what you have is your neighborhoods. So we're really big on the specific neighborhoods that we want to go in and dominate. And then lastly, we have our database or our sphere of influence. And if we could maintain all three of those consistently, we're going to do really well. Part of our sphere of influence dovetails into our neighborhoods, and we can talk about that in a minute. But those are the three systems that we use outwardly. Of course, we have everybody that's, we're encouraging them to do open houses. We're encouraging them. I'm sorry, my phone.
That's all good.
We're teaching. We really want to teach our agents how to fish as opposed to giving them the fish. Yeah, we're going to feed them every once in a while because they are hungry. But at the end of the day, we really need them to expand my bandwidth or our team's bandwidth. And that bandwidth comes down to shaking hands and kissing babies. And that's basically what we do. We get out, create relationships with people, make deposits in their lives. We find out what they need, and then we help them. And then we create that relationship so that when they're ready to sell or buy, that they think of us.
Yeah, man, that's a really good distinction that I'm hearing coming from you, is about making deposits, right? You guys are leading with value and
Exactly.
offering value before you ever ask for anything. And, when you're talking about influence and persuasion, the law of reciprocity is one of the six there, and that's working well for you and your team. So I love that. And I love the three pillars that you guys have. Let's talk deep about the neighborhoods, because that is one I'm extremely passionate about. That
Right.
If you dominate a neighborhood, focus on one, then when you have the domination, you pick up your second, your third, pretty much you pick up your head, and you're the top dog in the overall market.
Right.
But you didn't attack at a 30,000 foot view. You went to the 5,000 foot view and you dominated and you built momentum. And I feel a lot of agents use the shotgun approach.
Right.
They spray everywhere. And
Yeah.
what you're talking about is being purposeful. So let's talk a little bit. Let's talk about the big neighborhood that you dominate on the lake. And let's kind of walk through, how did you dominate it? How'd you pick it? Give us some background about that.
Yeah. So like many things in life, sometimes things it's like Forrest Gump. It just happens to you naturally. And I think the difference between those that are successful and not is they recognize it, and they say, oh, there's some consistency here. There's some secret sauce here that we need to develop. And what happened to me was my wife, Dawn, who you met, she's 2 years younger than I was. She was still at school. I was out at this time. And, we were planning on getting married, and I needed to kind of find somewhere to sell for a couple of years because we were planning on moving to Florida. And we're located in the Midwest in Dayton, Ohio, northern Cincinnati. And so I said, well, if I'm going to hang out and I'm going to hone my skills in real estate, I want to sell it. I want to be around water. So there was a small lake community about 15 minutes from Richmond, which was 45 minutes west of Dayton, where my parents lived. So I had influence in Dayton, I had influence in Richmond, and I was kind of had my feet in both markets a little bit there, living at home, I was making money, but not a ton. And so I'm going to park myself here in Lockingren, which is this little lake community. So I got in there, ended up doing Carlton Sheets type deals where we were buying houses with a buddy of mine, and then, basically refinancing and pulling 80% out. And I had some money from down payment from one of those, and I talked my dad into going halvesies on a lake house. And he gave me all the, hey, you got to have a 2-family home because your mother and I don't want to deal with you and your buddies partying and, all that kind of crap that you would hear from your parents. But they were open to the idea, never had a lake house. But so sure enough, the next weekend, that Sunday, this lake house comes on the market. That's the only one on the lake that's a double family home. It was like it was meant to be, right? So we end up buying it. And then I moved in full time. Well, my idea was to sell in alignment with my interests, which were lake homes. I knew that was important to me, and I wanted to do that for a period of time. Then we were gone. Well, instantly, I started naturally, because it's my personality, meeting a lot of people in the neighborhood, meeting them on the lake, kind of collecting, hey, come back to our house. We're going to have a party. We're going to do this. So we started bringing the community together, which was somewhat splintered and not a lot of consistency to it. Great people, but they just didn't know each other because they were coming from different areas, and they were there on the weekends and didn't really have time to go socialize. They were hanging out with families. So the point there is, Alex, is that it was one of the fundamental underpinnings of our strategy, and that is to bring the community together. Well, within 2 years of having events just at the house and doing things here and there, and really I started to hear, man, you really have helped us acclimate to the neighborhood, meet new people. Well, now it was the in crowd. Like if you wanted to, not socially, but if you wanted to be in the know of what was happening socially, and I'm not talking socioeconomically, money, that type of thing. I'm talking about just knowing what's happening in the neighborhood. You got to go talk to Gaydosh. So if you're going to buy a house, you probably want to be plugged in with him because he's the one that has the pulse on what's going on. So now all of a sudden we were creating that little fabric of the neighborhood that kind of grew and grew. And then once we realized that was the key to people calling us, we blew it up on steroids. And every week or every month we had an event. We, like you said, we gave value before we received any. I went out and hired a company, a $20,000 pyrotechnic company, to come in and shoot fireworks off the dam. And I bet I had only sold 5 houses in the neighborhood at the time. So I was nowhere did I bring the money out to spend it. But I knew if I could position ourselves in that neighborhood as the go-to person to give back to the community and to create the barrier so high that what other agent's going to do that unless they want to focus on that neighborhood? Well, they weren't going to. They were going to sell maybe 4 or 5 houses a year. The neighborhood was splintered. There wasn't anybody that had more than 5-10% market share. Well, we built that up to 75% market share because we went in and we basically just dominated the area with adding value to everybody we could, from all the different clubs, the garden clubs to the bass club, whatever they needed. Hey, come see me. I'll help you out. I'm going to work in this community and I'm going to give back to the community. And with that being the underlining of how we started it, that's kind of how everything started kind of going.
75% market share.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And obviously that's all attraction-based business. I mean, they're coming to you. That's fantastic, man.
And there's 1,500 homes in the neighborhood too. So it gives you perspective. Now, we had different levels of like 100% on the waterfront for many years, but this has been going on for 20 years. Now we're not quite at 70 with people being able to sell their houses. It's such a hot market. Now everybody wants to be there. It's been a little bit of a challenge because everybody has an uncle that's in the real estate, but we're still well over 60%.
Yeah. Well, that's like anything, right? When the market is hot, selling real estate honestly is easy. You just put a sign in the ground and that's where
Yeah.
all the flat fees, the discounters, they come out because money is easy.
Right.
Once there's a slight shift in the market, professionals like yourself, they become sought after and no longer do people care about what does it cost. They just know you get the result.
Right.
So great agents actually thrive in changing markets. Where in really hot markets, we're subject to obviously all the discounters where people say,
Right.
geez, everything is selling in a day.
Right.
So fantastic. So talk about what are you kind of shared some of those events. So I actually had a private conversation with you a couple of weeks ago about doing some postcards and you were like, man, we use postcards to talk about the events that we're doing. And I'm
Yeah.
like, whoa, nobody's doing that. Everybody's doing traditional postcards. So you are an event. First of all, for those who don't know, Andrew, this guy is the social butterfly. You meet him for 3.5 seconds. You'll love him. He'll have you at the bar doing shots. That is Gaydosh. Like just amazing person, extremely fun to be around. So that's your personality. So to me, events kind of fit who you are.
Yeah. I was speaking to that a little bit. I do think that you have to really kind of take a self-awareness test of, it's not a disc profile. It's what do you like to do? What is your interest? And if you can align your real estate career with your interest, you're going to always do well with it. There are guys that I know that are in the real estate business that are my competitors that are niche. So this one guy loves guns, man. He's got a shooting range and he's always into guns. Well, he's got a great network of clients through that gun world that I'm not a part of. I like to shoot guns, but I don't know as much about them. But that he's passionate about that is what my point is. For me, I was passionate about boats and water, and I love that, and it was easy for me to do it. So with that being said, if you are always aligning yourself with what you like to do, it's like you're not really working too hard. Well, with that particular lake community, you have to think about this, and this has been scaled to other communities, and we can talk about this here in a second, but you have 3 different things that you're working on. You have your audience, which is you have to create your audience, which is why we're so passionate about our CRM. And then there's Facebook, private Facebook groups and all that, which we can talk about if we have time. So you have to have your audience. You have to have your event that you're doing so that it's consistent with creating more people that want to become part of your audience so you can then get to the event. And then you need the event and the audience to throw people into your sphere of influence long term. So all 3 of those things work in unison to each other, and you can't do one without the other. They truly are like this circle symbiotic, deal. For example, if I'm going to have our 9-hole get together, which is a huge event we do with 400 people, and it's Memorial Day weekend, and we go to 9 different stops on the lake. So we're going to start out and we're going to have the promotion regarding the 9-hole event on one side of the postcard, which is going to talk about, hey, the 9-hole event's happening, you're invited, it's going to be a great deal. So that's the content for the 9-hole is the content for the postcard. The postcard is the delivery message or method. On the back of that postcard is going to be a real estate related message from me saying, hey, the market's crazy, it's Memorial Day, it's springtime, spring is sprung, or whatever you want to do, but there's always a real estate message and there's always an event message or something that we're doing for the community. The content is the actual event itself. And then to create the audience, you have to have both of those 2 pieces so people want to be part of the audience. And then once you have the audience, then you are sending the postcard to the audience with the content that's on the postcard. So if you can think about that, and people say, well, I run out of things to say, I run out of things to send. It's like, okay, is it Easter time? All right, well, let's have an Easter egg hunt, or let's have the Easter bunny come and take pictures in the neighborhood. Boom, postcard, Easter bunny on the front, provided by Andrew Gaydosh and Associates. Tagline, we're bringing the community together. Back of it, hey, it's Easter time, the inventory is low, you need to buy. Send it out to a Facebook Live that you're doing with you and the Easter bunny. Facebook Live is the content that's going to go on to your audience. It's going to be delivered to your Facebook private groups along with your postcard. And it just kind of goes in one big system. And that's where you can continually to do that. People just can't help but think of you when they're thinking of real estate.
System, you just said it. You have a system, which makes it easy, right? Because you're not just winging it. You're not just haphazardly making shit happen. You have it. I've got audience. I've got content, I have delivery mechanism. They all work together. That's the system. Guys, rinse and repeat every single event that we do for every single community. So are you putting all your communities into custom private Facebook groups?
Yes. So we go in and we have our neighborhood mayors program. So if you go to neighborhood mayors on Facebook, you can, check it out and try to join that group. But basically our program is 3 different tiers, and we're actually working on some content for that, or at least some modules so we can help train people. But at this point, it's real simple. You've got your 3 different levels of awareness in the neighborhood. If you are a dominant person and you're already dominating a neighborhood, you just want to take it up a notch, and you have more than 15, 20% market share, then you're the neighborhood mayor, right? You're the people they're thinking of. And when you have that awareness, you can do more things than a person that would be trying to start that farm in a neighborhood. So the first level would be your neighbor or your mayor candidate is what we call it. And many of our agents on our team are going into neighborhoods, and they're a candidate, right? They're vying for the job. They're out there campaigning, they're knocking doors, they're giving flyers. They're not spending a ton of money, but they are spending their effort. Once a person starts to get a couple listings here and there, and they're starting to get about 5%, maybe closer to a little bit more than that, then people recognize them. Then they move up to the next level, which is a first-term mayor, which basically is somebody that is, pretty consistently competing with others that are competing in the neighborhood, and they're going to do some things that are even extra than you would initially, and then obviously the neighborhood mayor at the very top. But what's cool about that is that each one of those on our thing, because we have multiple neighborhoods, we're identifying where we stand so that we are in unison with the amount of marketing dollars we're spending in those neighborhoods. And it's important to know that, but this is the key. As you're also think of your sphere of influence as its own entity or own neighborhood, maybe in the cloud. So as we're doing our big events for St. Patty's Day, we do a massive St. Patty's Day deal where we're inviting everybody, and we'll get 300 to 400 people that show up amongst another couple thousand people that show up and we piggyback on a bigger event. That goes out to our sphere of influence, which is everybody that our team has had, that has a relationship with. It's then our individual neighborhoods are being rolled up to that event by specific messages or content that's delivered to those neighborhoods. For example, our Yankee Trace that's located in Dayton, Ohio, is another neighborhood we do very similar to Lockengren. Well, everybody in Yankee Trace gets a Facebook, live video from me within the private Yankee Trace neighborhood group. It's, hey, it's Andrew. It's St. Patty's Day, one of my favorite events of the year. We want to invite you to our big party that's coming in this Sunday. It's at yada yada. And here's the details. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions, private message me. So you're utilizing all these events on the upper level, and then you're rolling up your individual neighborhoods to those events. So events are not specific to one purpose. They can be retreaded all the way throughout your entire your business.
Man, that's awesome. That is fantastic. Yeah, and I think you nailed it. You got to find what you're passionate about, right? If you shoot guns and you go to the gun range, that should be your audience, and you should be the mayor of the gun club, right? Yeah. Like whatever it takes. If you are a golfer and you belong to a country club, well, yeah, you should dominate the country club. You should be the agent to all the members. And you do that through knowing your market, becoming the expert, socializing. I love your use of events. I think that's really, really, really brilliant. The roll-up factor of all that. So what are, in your experience, if you had to start all over, let's say you did make that move to Florida, what would you do to kind of start over, knowing what you know now, if you had to fast track to become the dominant agent?
Yeah, so we moved, was interesting. We had I think when you and I first met, we were primarily working an area that was 45 minutes away from Dayton, Ohio. I sold houses occasionally, kind of like Gunshot Approach in Dayton. People might have known of me for playing ball there, but I didn't have really a market. We weren't known as one of the top agents in the market. So I just went through this, and we literally decided 3 years ago that we were going to go in and replicate what we did in Lockengren to Yankee Trace. And we specifically decided on Yankee because we wanted to make sure we had enough rooftops, like to have at least between 800 and 1,500 rooftops. Really, every door direct zip code or postal code area would be ideal because it's the most effective way to market when you're doing print media. So we did it. And to answer your question, there were a lot of things that didn't scale well from what we did at Lock and Grin. And there were other things that really did scale. What I realized quickly is that I didn't have the bandwidth to do as much as I was doing in Lock and Grin in both communities. So, but I did know that the fundamentals work. Number one is I had to create that database. I had to create the audience. So we have a very strong Yankee Trace neighborhood group in Yankee Trace. Every time I send out a postcard, I always leave a little bit of the content out that they need to get to more information, go to the Yankee Trace neighborhood group for whatever they're needing to know about that particular event. Again, creating that content, driving people to that, because it's my own TV station. You know, no one else can get on there. There's not another realtor that can get on. It's me, and it's what I want to project to the audience. We allow individual people in the neighborhood to post, and they can post all day long as it's not real estate related. In certain areas, in certain neighborhoods, we actually have to approve the post because it gets kind of heated. It's basically like a next door, you know, so we have to monitor that. But I would say to anybody that's looking to create and dominate a neighborhood, be really, really aware of the influence that you can have with your private Facebook groups and with your postcards in your database. And just try to get in there and build that database as big as you can so that you have the method to deliver to these people.
Awesome. What, I know you've got a team of 14, you're doing a lot of coaching and training with your team, helping them individually grow as agents. What do you feel are the 2 or 3 absolute must-have skills that agents should master that correlate really well to being successful in real estate?
You know, it's interesting because I see all kinds, and you see it too. You're like, oh man, I cannot believe that person is successful. I think the reason they're successful is they hustle. So the first thing is they got to be present. You have to get your ass out of bed and you got to go to work. And, you know, sometimes it's not fun. Sometimes you don't feel good. Sometimes there's 12 inches of snow or whatever the deal is. But the agents that I see, the most consistently successful agents, are the ones that show up. Number one, you got to show up. Number two, you have to hustle. And you have to do things that other people are not willing to do. And you don't have to do it forever. You just have to do it enough to get through to the next level. So I think consistency, an awareness of your schedule and being selfish about your schedule, because if you don't, people will take all your time from you. So the way that you come about that is you have to create your ideal day and your ideal week. What am I going to do from 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. on a Monday? What am I going to do from 8 to 9 on a Tuesday? It could be very different. Block out your entire week. And then as things fall apart, you know, if somebody doesn't show up to a listing appointment, you don't sit there, you don't go home, you don't do whatever you want to do, waste time at the grocery store. You go back to okay, what was I supposed to be doing? If I didn't have this appointment, this is what I need to be doing at this time. And if you can keep that, that's going to keep you anchored. So in my opinion, you know, those are the 3 things that I think are the most successful about real estate people. And then, of course, you have to be a life learner. You have to be willing to, like you do, read books, learn from others, people that are already doing it. Jay Kender says you don't have to be the smartest kid in school. You just have to sit next to them. Doesn't mean you're cheating, but it means you're asking questions every chance you get. And I think that if you're willing to learn and you're willing to hustle and you're willing to show up, you're going to be successful. The more you get going, then you start refining your skills and you start thinking about, okay, man, I want to do what Alex is doing. He's killing it. Okay, well, let's do what Alex is doing. We don't have to recreate the wheel. Let's just do it, and it's going to work.
I love that. Love that. Awesome. And hey, I really appreciate the time that you've set aside to kind of give back to the agent community. Any parting words, anything you want to share, any advice you want to share with agents who are either getting into the business or maybe you're kind of plateaued, but you know, they got that fire. They really want to be the dominant agent in their neighborhood. Any advice for those people?
Yeah, I think hyper local is good. It's an attraction mentality. You have to have a couple different fronts. It's like the United States military. They're not just all Air Force or Marines. You know, you got all different sectors of the military that's important. You need to have that in your business. You need to identify what it is and understand that what you do today isn't going to be what you're going to do tomorrow. And grind, man. Just get up and grind, track, and make sure that you're doing what you say you're going to do.
Fantastic, man. Hey, thank you so much, buddy, for carving out some time and giving back to the agent community.
Oh, you bet. If there's anything I can do for you guys, let us know.
Appreciate it. Thank you again, Andrew. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dominant Agent Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please be sure to leave a comment and review on whatever platform you're listening on so that we can continue to bring you the very best guests